What's up, everybody? This is episode number, what is it, 43, 44? I actually lost track for this one. That's all right. I hope you guys are doing great. I hope everybody is having a great Monday so far. If you guys are checking this out and listening to it, if you guys are watching, you can see the beautiful background I've elected for this episode. A little more out in the open and the great outdoors. Very nice and relaxing. I think we definitely need it sometimes. Sometimes I think I get my best thoughts out of these kind of environment. I think it's particularly important for all of us to not forget about nature, especially someone like me who's as deep into the tech world as I am. As much time as I'm spending with it, I love being outdoors too. So yeah, with that being said, hey, thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. This is Rolling with Reason. This podcast is kind of all over the place. In most cases, last week we did a philosophy-oriented episode. I thought it was a good, necessary episode. One of our persistent or constant viewers said they would like to see a philosophy episode, and so that's what I did. I kind of just went off the cuff. That's how most of this is. I just kind of get on camera and let my brain go. And I think some people like listening to that, even if they didn't. I think it's good for me. I think it's healthy. This week for me has kind of been interesting. Felt unproductive, but that's all right. We're trying. That's what matters, right? Is that we're trying. We've been working with the neural networks. It's been very interesting, very fascinating to me, of course. Kind of the fundamentals and the building blocks of what is today associated with AI. We have nodes, which are also known as neurons. They usually carry these statistical values called biases. We have inputs. Those are features, usually from a feature vector or the feature vector itself. We have weights that reside between the inputs and the node. We multiply the input value of the feature by the weight, and usually there's multiple features pointing to the same node. So we sum the product of those, and then we add that bias value. And then that node itself usually is a activation function. Rectified linear unit can be a ReLU. Sometimes we use sigmoids. Admittedly, I don't quite understand the sigmoids to the extent that I should yet. That's all right. We'll get there. So working on that, working through the mathematical problem. I got it wrong multiple times. There should be one predictable output. And I already know the solution based off of the author from the textbook. And I worked through it twice, and I wasn't able to arrive at that value. So I'm going to do it again, because clearly I'm getting something wrong. So I find that important to me to get that right. Started to move into some more complex necessities that are also aligned and work in conjunction with neural networks, and that's the training process. There's the initialization process, which those weights and biases are values, and they're randomly selected. And there's a better way to randomly select those values during the initialization process. And so that's what that is. It's kind of a better guess at what values to pick. Both backpropagation and gradient descent work with the same values, but in different ways. I suppose in a very layman's term way, since I can't dive too deep into that aspect yet until I understand the output that I was supposed to arrive at earlier in the textbook. Backpropagation is kind of acknowledging the error difference. So usually, maybe now is a good time to say it's worth noting that this is for training in particular. So we train these models before we pass them values in the real world, out in the wild. And so backpropagation is kind of identifying the error difference between a given and expected output. Again, this could be vaguely wrong. I definitely need to dive deeper on this particular subject, which I will. But it's just worth noting that I think it's kind of like an optimization, kind of like an understanding of what is the error differences. And then gradient descent kind of works in conjunction with that. Gradient descent is, the way it was kind of described to me in the book, was that you're sitting on a hill, and there's a bunch of hills around you, both above and below. The best solution for going down the hill to get to the town that's all the way at the bottom is by evaluating the hills around you. And that process of selection for the next step to take is based off of the minima, the local minima. There's a global minima. That would be pretty much the village, essentially. Its value for, as far as its slope is concerned, is 0. There's also going to be a maxima. It's going to be 0 as well, as far as the step count, right? So the degree of the slope, the descent, right? And we look at the next closest minima, so being the next closest bottom pocket that we can actually go to. And within that stepping process, that's kind of where the backpropagation comes in to a degree, I believe. But again, I'm not too sure. So I don't want to go too much deeper into this subject just because I know that I don't want to mix it up. I'm going to have to go back through and reread and re-understand that and then work it out. We're going to end up using that with the same test data that we used for the classical models. There's a bird up there. And so that'll help give us an idea of what's going on and the accuracy of it. Also, something I found interesting was the amount of times that you change or the amount of times that you train these models, because it can have different output. In our particular case, I believe it ranged from 71 all the way up to 89% in terms of accuracy. And so, that's a big difference in accuracy. Almost 18% or so, something like that, right? Being such a big difference in accuracy like that can have effects depending on the context of how you're using that neural network, right? If it's in a medical environment, you can't be wrong, so you're going to want the accuracy to be higher. But there's some caveats to it being like extremely high, right? If it's 100% right all the time, that should kind of raise an eyebrow. Because you could be overfitting. And so we've talked about overfitting before. That can happen with trees, so decision trees, right? If we're overfitting, that's not a good thing, because then when you put the model out in the wild, it's going to produce things that didn't account for what it could encounter in the wild when it's being used. And so that's extremely important to know that overfitting is still a potential problem within a neural network. Neural networks are obviously used today, especially in conjunction with LLMs. We haven't gotten to that subject too deeply yet within the book yet, so I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole. But to kind of segue out of the tech for a minute, I've been thinking a lot about going camping. The season's among us, summer's here, so that's really exciting. I like hiking, so I'd like to go on a hike or two, go camp out. Maybe not in Ohio, maybe go somewhere else. Maybe I'll shoot another scenic episode like this one, but we'll see. But yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. I think nature's important. I think we shouldn't forget about nature, even if it's just going to a local park and being outside and kind of being in it. I think there's something about that for us as humans. I think that's important. Nature is nurturing to a degree. Maybe if you were in the Amazon jungle or something, maybe I wouldn't say that so much, but yeah, I think nature is crucially important. I'm really enjoying the fact that I'm shooting this episode outside. It's different for sure. That's very cool. Very happy about it. Yeah, I feel like I didn't get that much done this week. I feel like I could have got more done. Could have learned more. I also moved locations of where I was working again, not out of my own will, so it's very frustrating, to say the least. I don't know how that's going to play out in the long run, but I had some very good ideas for the podcast for making this stuff easier. So I'm thinking next week I'm going to take the time to implement those ideas. I think it'll make the podcast easier for me to produce. I had a comment, somebody asking about maybe helping with the production of the podcast, so I could get my previous and still co-host John back on, because it's one of the hard things. We kind of had a location set up so we could do the podcast together, and then just conflicting times, and the area that we were using I felt was no longer necessary for the podcast, just because of circumstances. And so now we would have to do a video podcast together. And for anybody who's been listening, they would know that this is nothing new. If you guys have been around, you know this. So just need to figure out how to do the video thing together. I think it'd be pretty easy, but what makes me nervous is the audio and the transferring of the videos. I can still figure this out, but I think ideally I would like to have them shot at the same time, and the audio tracks be separate and things of that nature. And so it's just something I got to figure out. That's something I got to figure out with John. We'll figure it out. For sure. Just takes time. But as far as people asking to help edit and figure out the video stuff, yeah, I totally get that. I get where you're coming from. I think if you got some useful ideas, definitely send them my way. Personally, I think there's a way to message directly within Spotify now, so shoot me a message if you have any good ideas. I will say, however, my editing and process is pretty complex, and but I enjoy doing that stuff myself, and I enjoy doing it on the weekends. I'm actually super excited thinking about some of the automation stuff that will make my life easier, and so maybe that will make figuring out the whole video thing on that other regard easier as well. But nonetheless, sometimes we're just getting pushed to our limits, and we just got to keep going forward and figuring the stuff out. That could kind of be said for the technical stuff I was talking at the beginning, and also understanding that sometimes we just need to get outside Sometimes we just need to enjoy ourselves. I think that's very true, and I think we can't forget that. We can't lose sight of that. That's a part of this whole trying and making sure you're putting in the correct effort for yourself. You know, only we ourselves can evaluate that. I miss jiu-jitsu a lot. That's been a struggle, but I'm getting stuff done that, you know, I need to get done and I want to get done. And so that feels good, but I can definitely feel the effects of not doing jiu-jitsu for a long period of time. Sucks, but that's all right. We're gonna get back in there. We're gonna figure that out for sure here soon. One final note to close up on, I created a drone website. I thought that was pretty cool. If you guys want to check it out, it's at Aerotech or aerodrones.tech. I built that website myself. It's really cool. There's kind of like a little quote tool on there, and you guys can submit quotes for getting some aerial footage done for some projects. It's kind of oriented towards data centers and manufacturing and industrial stuff, but as well as small projects and stuff too. I'm sure we could definitely figure something out. It was really a project for somebody else, so I guess I'm kind of speaking on behalf of that individual. There's a whole licensing process and stuff for drones. I didn't get paid to do it or anything. I just actually wanted to do it and figure it out. And so there was some cool stuff I figured out there. But yeah, aerodrones.tech, guys, check it out. It's really cool. I'm really proud of how the website looks after it's been up and running now. I like how it looks. So, but yeah, I don't have too much more other than that. This was kind of choppy all over the place. I could feel it. I just got some stuff I know I need to work on. As far as tech is concerned, I always got stuff to work on there, and so I'm gonna figure that out. Hope you guys have a great week. This episode was different for me. The tone was kind of the same throughout the whole episode. I kind of felt that and noticed that as well. But I just feel weird. I feel like I'm trying. Sometimes you just got to be complacent with being bored and keep pushing forward, and that's going to be what makes a difference. So I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. So thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Rolling with Reason. Hope you guys like the view. Later.
Thanks for listening. Stay resilient, embrace the struggle, and keep moving forward.